that Dan Henderson would fight Michael Bisping. Now, everybody's pissed. I get it. Everybody's pissed. And you got three likely suspects in this order. Number one, Jacare. Number two, Chris Weidman, largely because of the logistics, because they are going to Madison Square Garden. He's a New Yorker. And then Rockhold comes in third in that, even though he was the most recent champion. He comes in third in that list. You've then got Dan Henderson, and people are upset about it. But if you took that belt out of the equation, you make that fight right now. Not one reporter complains, not one guy in the back complains, not one fan complains. That belt, because of the rankings and the hierarchy and who's done what when, that's the only thing causing a problem here. And some people have taken the stance that Michael Bisping is looking for an easy fight. And that's just not fair. That guy has fought anybody at any time, including Rockhold, on no notice. You know, he was thrown in there, I can't remember, what he had, 8 days or something, he was thrown in there against Rockhold. Before that, he fought Anderson. People said when he was getting ready to fight Rockhold, I remember Weidman specifically said this, and he said, Michael Bisping is the worst choice in title fight history. And I was scratching my head going, Weidman's a tough guy, and he's earned the right to his opinion. There's no way around that. I would just counter that statement by saying, Chris, you became famous and you became the world champion by beating Anderson Silva. That's the same guy Michael Bisping just beat. Michael Bisping's last fight prior to Rockhold at the time of this statement was a win over Anderson Silva, the same guy that you got famous off of. So I wasn't sure how they dismissed him. Now, when you look at Henderson, there's no way to say that's an easy fight for Michael Bisping. Dan Henderson knocked Michael Bisping out cold. Cold. And if you think that psychologically Michael's forgot about that, no way. There's no way. Dan Henderson could definitely win this fight. Just on his skills alone. They're going to stand up. Mike's not going to try to take Dan down. Dan's not going to try to take Michael down. They're going to stand up and punch. And we've seen them do that before. And Henderson won. Now, I get that things have changed. I get how well Bisping's fighting. I get that Henderson's age. I don't discount any of that. I'm just saying, if you're taking the argument that Bisping asked for this fight because it was easy, that's not a guy you can pin that on. That is not a guy that takes easy fights, ever, or has ever had one. From the TRT Vitor that nobody wanted to face, to the Dan Henderson back then, to trying to get fights with John Jones, to calling out Chris Weidman, to getting in there with Tim Kennedy, to stepping in against Rockhold, to fighting you cannot pin that on Michael Bisping. And you certainly can't blame Dan Henderson. He's 44 years old. He's coming off a win over Hector. It's a last hurrah. There's no question about that. Of course you take the fight. What's Henderson supposed to do? Say, no, I really think that should be Jacare's fight. No, it doesn't work that way. And Jacare was offered the fight against Rockhold and turned it down. He got hurt. He got hurt in his fight against Vitor. I wouldn't kick a guy for being down or hurt, but the bottom line is, yeah, Jacare, you are the guy, and you were offered the fight. And you said no. And regardless of what your reasons were, that did happen. That comes back to Jose Aldo. Jose's got to fight Conor. There's nothing the UFC can do about it if Conor should return to featherweight. UFC can put any match together they want, with the exception of when you have an interim champion and you have a champion. Now they have to fight. The rules of fighting say they have to fight. Conor cannot return to that division and Jose fights somebody else. Can't do it. Jose can't be in that division still. Conor goes back and Conor doesn't fight him. They have to fight each other. And the reason that that's a problem is Jose's a flake. He's pulled out of 5 fights. There's a big difference in saying no to a fight. That sucks too. But it's totally different when you sign the contract, you let the posters get made, you let the tickets sell, you film the countdown show. This is millions and millions of dollars in promotion. You do the media tour, and then you pull up lame. He's done it to him, and then he did it again, 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 and then he ran his mouth that he'd fight Conor anywhere, anytime, any weight class, fight him in the streets. Got the call to fight him and said no. I think Jose Aldo might be the best pound-for-pound fighter we've ever seen. He might be the best talent. There's a few guys you can say that about. John Jones is, of course, in there. Jose's in there. Dominic Cruz is in there. DJ sits at top of the list right now, though he's got a loss to Dominic. There's a few guys you could say that about. But Aldo's one of them. I got no problem with that guy's abilities. He's incredible. But he's a flake. You cannot count on that guy. If they announce that fight, and they will, I couldn't rightly come on this show and tell you guys to buy tickets. I could not tell you that with good conscience. Get plane tickets. Set that weekend aside. I had no idea if he's going to show up. I'd bet he won't. I would bet he won't. He just took on Frankie Edgar for a world title. Should Frankie have won, it would have set history. He would have been only the third fighter in UFC history to win championships in 2 different divisions. And these guys are jerking the curtain. They're second or third fight of the night. That's where they belong. You can't stick Jose Aldo on top of a card because he's a flake. Then he shows up in there. He fights Frankie. His output, Jose's output was nothing compared to Frankie's. He threw 1 punch for every 5 that were thrown at him. Tried no takedowns, tried no submissions, and won the fight. And it was the right call. It was the single greatest strategy of the entire week. Jose Aldo conserved his energy. He picked his shots. His defense was immaculate. Immaculate. His wrestling defense is the same as George St. Pierre's wrestling offense. George St. Pierre's never wrestled, and he goes in and he's the most effective wrestler in the sport. Jose Aldo has never wrestled, and he is the single best wrestling defense in MMA. Better than Cormier's, better than mine. But I mean, go through the guys that you might think are good wrestlers. Nobody defends as well as Jose Aldo. I remember when he fought Chad Mendez, Chad had hit a perfect shot on him, perfect, and Jose would bounce him off like a brick wall, would barely even sprawl. Hit him with his hips, boom, boom, come right back up. Jose Aldo also, when there's 10 seconds left in a round, and I don't know if you guys can hear this at home. I think you can, but I don't know. When you're live in the venue, there's the timer will hit something together, a little clapper when there's 10 seconds left, so everybody knows there's 10 seconds left. When that clapper goes off, it's like a trigger. Jose Aldo's waiting for it, and when he hears it, he explodes. He absolutely explodes, and he steals rounds. And when you're in fights like the ones he had with Frankie Edgar, where they're super, super close, you can steal the whole round, leave that impression in the judges' minds, and he does it every time. Fight after fight, round after round, year after year. It was such a good strategy. And post USADA, Jose Aldo doesn't look the same. Looks like he's changed a few things. So he adapted. He thought, well, I can't do the same output as I used to do. I'm not doing the same stuff I used to do. Here's how I'm going to handle it. I'm going to pick my shots better. It was amazing. Jose Aldo was amazing. But now you got to put him with Conor, who he's scared to death of, as we've all seen. I just think it's a tough spot.